Good afternoon and welcome to TagamiVision. I'm Phil Tagami, and with me today is our City Council person, Delsey Brooks, representing City Council District 6. Delsey, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We've been, over the last couple shows, focusing on different issues facing Oakland, and one of the issues that we've been chatting about is crime in Oakland, and talking a little bit about Measure Y and how people think Measure Y is going. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us today on Measure Y?
Measure Y, well, you know, I was not a proponent of Measure Y. I thought that we weren't being honest with the public about what Measure Y was going to do. And I think much of what I thought would happen has happened with Measure Y. So I am still not an advocate of Measure Y.
The original proposition that people put forth, or I should say that some of the council members put forth, was Measure R. And that was voted down by the electorate. And that was really focusing more on suppression than on diversion. And then I guess Measure Y was a split between diversion and suppression. Tell me where we fall short on Measure Y and maybe what needs to be changed or strengthened to address and deal with the issues we're facing in Oakland.
Well, I think one of the issues with respect to Measure Y is that it didn't look at Oakland specific. We took, in terms of the implementation of Measure Y, and tried to follow the Boston model in terms of reduction in crime. And one of the things that the Boston model says is that you can't take this model and replicate it everywhere else. You have to do something specific to your community. But we should be clear about Measure Y. It didn't just talk about the police aspect, and we've dictated to the chief how many officers he has to hire and how soon he has to hire them, regardless of the real world issues with respect to hiring people. And we took $4 million for the next 10 years and guaranteed that all of our fire stations would be open, regardless of the fact that we were doing a flexible deployment model that was working, and other jurisdictions started to follow that model. We abandoned it while other people did it, and we had no appreciable loss of property, no loss of life, no injuries. But we wanted to cut a deal so that we could get the money to pay for the campaign for Measure Y. And so we've given the fire union $40 million over the next 10 years under Measure Y.
Wow. So I don't think a lot of people know that. Going back to the policing question on Measure Y, the figure that I researched, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think Oakland, since Measure Y started, has hired about 238 new officers, meaning through the academy and actually hired, but then has lost actually 235 due to retirement. So the net change has really been only about 3 additional officers as a byproduct of Measure Y. Is that what you've been hearing as well?
You know, I cannot tell you that I'm up on the numbers right now, so you're probably right.
Okay. So as we go forward now, the mayor's presented some new findings from his task force, and the mayor has also held a press conference to address and talk about some of the things he wants to do to address crime in Oakland. If you were given the authority, what are the 3 things that we should be focusing on to address crime in Oakland?
You know, unfortunately, I've been out of town, so I haven't heard what the mayor specifically said with respect to his goals in terms of combating the crime problem. We have an unemployment issue. We have an educational issue. And we really have an issue of people not being fully aware of how government works in today's environment. There's this notion that we can just bring law enforcement in and it's going to take care of all of the issues in the city. That's not a reality in any urban environment anywhere these days. And so it is truly a partnership between government and the residents in a city to work collectively to address the issues that are there in the community. I've seen emails where constituents say, what are the council members going to do about the homicides?
Right.
As if we know when they're going to occur and we could go out there and stop them before they happen. I'm not trying to make light of the issue because it's a very serious issue. But I think that we have to think a little bit deeper than what people are saying. And I think one of the real issues that has caused some of the frustration amongst the residents is that the council responds sometimes in a knee-jerk reaction and does things to make it look like we're doing something when you know they aren't going to really, it's not going to make a real difference in the neighborhood.
I think it's Supervisor Miley's office, in conjunction with other Alameda County agencies, put forth a blueprint to deal with violent crime. And in essence, they focused on the root causes. And it was actually not a, but maybe a 12-page document which is available online. But they did go into some depth talking about the economic circumstance, education, clearly drug use, family violence, and a number of other causes, root causes of crime. And then at the same time went further to talk about some of the steps that can be done to address it. Some of the programmatic elements that came out of Measure Y was funding to specific non-government organizations and nonprofits who foster these programs in an attempt to address some of the root causes, and again, referred to that as diversion as opposed to suppression. How do you think that's going to be measured? Besides what Measure Y committee does the council then come in and audit and look for measurables to determine if that funding is going to continue to those nonprofits?
There's supposed to be a auditing process where we bring in an outside organization and they look at evaluating the organizations and that sort of thing. I think that one of